Morning everyone. I know that at the moment we're continuing our series on worship, and these encouragement videos I think are helpful to us in terms of re-evaluating how we engage with God in worship, particularly in times where we're not able to gather and corporately sing together. I've been thinking quite a bit recently about the concept of God's sovereignty. We often worship God as sovereign, don't we? And I think there's been quite a lot of misunderstanding over what God's sovereignty means for us. Certainly there has been in my life. I think often when we think about God being sovereign, we come to the conclusion that everything that must happen in this world therefore is part of God's will, that it's what he desires because he's sovereign. We use that in the kind of sense that not just that he's in control, but that he's in control in the infinite detail of everything that goes on. So everything that happens must be part of his will and must be desired by him. But I don't really believe that that's true. And I don't think any of us really believe that that is true. When we see injustice and sickness and things happening in this world that clearly don't stand in line with what we know of God's heart and what we know of his promise of heaven's reality. We know that sickness is never God's will because Jesus died on the cross, not only to forgive us and see us rescued and won back to him, but also to pay for all of our sickness. That he took that and bore that in his body when he was beaten. The stripes on his back, it says, by his stripes we're healed. So we know that God's desire is for our healing because he paid for it, and you don't pay for something you don't want. We know that God's heart is for justice, and I know others have spoken about justice in the context of worship. So I have been thinking recently about what it means to worship a sovereign God. And that doesn't mean that we are just worshipping someone who is fully in control. It means that we are part of outworking his sovereign plans for our world. So when I think about the Queen, for example, the Queen is the sovereign of our country. And we have laws that are passed in her name. We have then, however, crowned servants who, part of what their role is to see that law put into place, to bring to justice those who don't obey that law. So not everyone in the UK will live according to the law of the land. There are people who break the law, but ultimately there are people out there who seek to bring them to justice. And whilst this is not a perfect analogy because the Queen is not perfect and she is not as all-powerful as God, it is a picture of what sovereignty actually means. It means that there is a will and a desire for our country and laws that are put in place according to that, and then justice that follows. And with God being sovereign, he has a plan and a purpose to align earth with heaven. A plan where his will is outworked, and because he is all-powerful, his will come to pass. But that doesn't mean it isn't frustrated. It doesn't mean that people obey it all the time. It means that actually what is required are his followers and his people and citizens of heaven, children of God, to be part of bringing his sovereign will to bear in justice issues, in healing, in all those things that don't align with heaven. And so part of our worship is not just to praise this God who is perfect in every way and who is sovereign and whose will come to pass, but it is also to live according to that. It's to align our lives with his sovereign will. It's to see what the reality of heaven looks like and then to bring it to bear in the earth. And so where we see injustice, to bring justice. Where we see sickness, we bring healing, because we know that we carry the authority of God to do so, because we know it is his will and it has been paid for. So today, as we worship and as we praise our sovereign God, let's also align ourselves with his will. Let's also outwork that sovereign will in and through us in the situations we find ourselves in. And I pray that as we do that, God would meet us in the midst of it, because we don't do these things alone. We do them as his children, filled with his presence. We are carriers of God, and we are outworkers of his will. And as we do that, we bring worship to him. So today, may your day be filled with worship as you outwork his sovereign will in your life. God bless.